Welcome back to On the Grid Podcast, Season 4, Episode 6. I think we're already up to, which seems crazy to say that.
Go again.
And
Go again. It's episode 8.
is it 8? Now.
Go again.
Hello and welcome back to On the Grid Podcast, Season 4, Episode 8. Crazy that we're already up to 8 episodes. It is our first season review. So we're reviewing the Bahrain Grand Prix, which it was good to have Formula One back, but I'm not too sure if we said that after about the 5th lap. Joining with me as ever is Adrian Keita. How are you? How did you find the race?
The race out in front, quite boring. Max Verstappen won by about 20 odd seconds. But I mean, as a Ferrari fan, can I complain? A 3 and 4? I don't think I can complain. I mean, I was expecting a little bit more from Charles Leclerc. That goes without saying. But he managed his own issues and came home in fourth. And Carlos Sainz very aggressively got a third place, which is good to see. I want hungry Sainz. I don't want this jibby jabber with the team being on his back. I just want him to showcase his talent, show the team why he should deserved the seat instead of Lewis Hamilton. But less of that, less of a talk about Ferrari and our inter-team battles. No, it was good to have Formula One back. Just a shame that it was once again another commanding victory for Max Verstappen.
Yeah, like you said about Carlos Sainz there is a good point. I'm sure we'll get into that later on in the episode. We'll start off with qualifying though, and in Q1 we had a double Alpine exit in 19th and 20th. They look like they're in trouble this season, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, we were talking before our kind of predictions ahead of this race that if we had revisited our season predictions after what we saw in pre-season, we probably would have jumbled it up a little bit with the Alpines probably lower down the pecking order. But I mean, it's troubling from what's happened during the weekend, especially in the race and qualifying. And to qualify so down low in 19th and 20th respectively is definitely a shock to the system. But you've got to look at it one of two ways. You either bounce back and make the most of things, or you can completely slump and just stay at the bottom of the pecking order. But I think the Enstone team won't be doing that. I think Esteban Ocon and Pierre Gasly, two very, very good drivers, won't be looking at it as a bad way. They'll only be thinking it's only up from here. It's the first race of the season. Yeah, it started off so badly, but it can only get better from here. So, I mean, I mean, it's not necessarily a best qualifying, but we saw what happened with Pierre Gasly. He qualified, I believe it was in 20th last season, for the Bahrain Grand Prix. So it's not all doom and gloom, but certainly something needs to happen at Alpine to kind of propel them back up to the top of the midfield. That's for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Like you said, it's a very long season. We were sat here 12 months ago and saying the same thing about McLaren, and look how their fortunes have changed. So there's a long way to go. There is a new concept there at that Alpine car, which they're still understanding. So that might be part of the reason. So it is theoretical that we could see sort of some updates around the mid-season mark once they understand that car, like we saw from McLaren, and maybe their fortunes will change. Also out in Q1, Logan Sargent, not last, not a P20 merchant in qualifying at least, but P18. It's improvement, isn't it?
Mm, I mean, when you've got two very slow Alpines behind you, can you call that improvement? I don't know. In theoretically, yes, it is improvement. It's P18. Um, but we saw what happened in the race, and he was nowhere to be seen throughout the race. But in qualifying, it's not a P20. So whoopee, well done, Logan. Not a P20 merchant anymore.
Yeah, so the two others out in Q1 were the Stake, Kick, Sauber, whatever you want to call them, pairing of Valtteri Bottas and Guan Yu Zhou. Disappointment for them, but I think it was really to be expected. I don't think they thought that they would be challenging too high up. Out in Q2, so you had both Haas cars making it through to Q2 in the first place, which was a bit of a shock. I had it in my predictions that they would both get knocked out in Q1, but Kevin Magnussen up in P15. Is it all doom and gloom for Haas? Maybe, from this weekend, we've seen a bit of pace, both in qualifying and the race. Is it, maybe there's some promising signs up ahead?
I certainly do think that Haas could be a dark horse this season. Um, and I'm not saying it because of what happened with Nico Hulkenberg and Kevin Magnussen in qualifying. Well, we saw what happened with Nico Hulkenberg. He is a Q3 merchant, getting that Haas car into Q3 and qualifying 10th. Didn't necessarily go well for him in the race. But there's clearly, like I mentioned in the season predictions, their one lap pace well, especially Nico Hulkenberg's, his one lap pace is very, very good. He's just got to kind of nullify him, dropping down the pecking order in the race, because I don't think the Haas has mixed very well when it comes to terms of one lap pace and race pace. They usually fall away in the race pace, and the one lap pace is very, very good. But I wasn't necessarily expecting Kevin Magnussen to get out of Q1 and into Q2, and that was quite a nice little surprise for everyone. But it's definitely not all doom and gloom, especially with Alpine being so slow. Um, there's already two positions there. Logan Sargent isn't necessarily going to challenge too much until he gets up to speed with the 2024 spec of the Williams car. So that's another place. The two kick Sauber cars are looking decent. But are they going to be challenging week in, week out? So that could be another two places. And from there you've got what, five places? So you're up to 15th already. So it's not all doom and gloom, but I think that if Haas are to challenge for more points, they've got to use that strategy of very good qualifying, and managing their race pace. But from what we saw in Bahrain, they're looking up for the fight and raring to go.
Yeah, like I said, I think we were a little bit harsh on Haas, but I think part of that was coming from the team. I think they were kind of being a bit pessimistic in terms, and then anything else is a bonus. They're expecting to be last almost. I think that's what the team principal came out and said. Also out in Q2 were the V-carb pairing of Tsunoda and Ricciardo. Tsunoda up in 11th, Ricciardo 14th. Maybe a little bit disappointing considering all the hype around them. And without trying to touch too much on the race, have they been overhyped a little bit? Have we expected them to be better than they actually are?
Well, most people were saying that it was Red Bull. That VCARB car is a carbon copy of a 2023 Red Bull car. And I don't think it is. I think it's a nullified Red Bull car from 2023. Because I mean, you're expecting the AlphaTauri, the Toro Rosso, the VCARB car, whatever you want to call them, to be out of Q1 and into Q2, and they did that quite comfortably. I mean, Tsunoda was knocking on the door of Q3, and I think you can sort of expect that from Tsunoda. I think he's trying to also buy himself a better seat ahead of 2025. So I think he's putting all the cards on the table. And for Daniel Ricciardo to be beaten by his teammate in qualifying in the first race, it won't be disheartening, but I'm pretty sure it will be playing in the inter-team battle between the two of them. I'm not going to go too much into what happened in the race between them, but it looks like it's a little bit of a feisty battle already between the two VCARB cars, and that could be a feature for the rest of the season. But it's definitely not the 2023 the 2023 Red Bull car that everybody was hoping for. It's a nullified version, but it's a good stepping stone. They know where they're expecting to be, and they're kind of expecting to be on the brink of the points, and for them to qualify into Q2 and relatively well into Q2 and close to Q3 is a good thing for them.
Yeah, the other two drivers to not make it into Q2 were or into Q3, sorry, were Lance Stroll and Alex Albon. Moving on to Q3 then, and Max Verstappen claimed pole position by about 0.2 of a second. So not the gap that we expected Red Bull to have. And in actual fact, Charles Leclerc, who qualified in second, his Q2 time was quicker than Verstappen's pole time. So it goes to show Ferrari, when it comes to qualifying, they are on the hunt.
Um, it's it's tough, you know. It's a tough pill to swallow because, like you say, Charles Leclerc's time in Q2 was quicker than Max Verstappen's pole time, and you're thinking, why could you not have replicated that? And it's just a kick in the teeth a little bit. Um, but yeah, Ferrari are definitely on the hunt for a pole position, and I think the pole position merchant, Charles Leclerc, I'm calling him that because he hardly ever converts his poles into wins, doesn't he? But I think it's a good step in the right direction for Ferrari. Second and fourth, um, behind Verstappen and Russell sandwiched in between the two of them. It's definitely a good step in the right direction, but it's just I think when it comes to qualifying, Ferrari are very much. I wouldn't say they're very much like a Haas, where their qualifying pace is very good and the race pace just kind of fades away. Um, but it's similar. But in the race, they had to manage a few issues, especially Charles Leclerc. But in the hunt for pole positions, I think Ferrari could be a team where they could be definitely battling Red Bull for regular pole positions this season. Shall I say Red Bulls or shall I say Max Verstappen? I think I'll say the latter. But yeah, qualifying battles between Ferrari and Red Bull will definitely be very feisty for the rest of the season. And hopefully they're split quite evenly between the two teams.
Yeah, perhaps Red Bull's qualifying pace isn't as quite as strong. We did see that quite a few times last season where their qualifying pace actually, on the face of it, isn't as strong. I think they're prioritizing their race setup and their race pace with Verstappen, who still put in a great qualifying. And maybe that's part of the reason Sergio Perez had his struggles last season in the sense that they don't have that buffer that they have in terms of race pace, and that's why you see maybe Sergio Perez struggle in qualifying, not make it into Q3 or finish sort of ninth or 10th, but then still go on and finish third, fourth, fifth, and get a good haul of points. It's just a thought. George Russell up in third. He beat Lewis Hamilton quite by only 2 tenths in the end, but George Russell was third and Lewis Hamilton was ninth. I think that goes to show how tight it was in qualifying. It's a good battle to see. I think that they said that Hamilton prioritizes race setup. Obviously, now we know that that didn't quite work out, and I think part of that was due to the DRS strain that he almost found himself in, as well as some other factors. Sergio Perez was in fourth. No, he wasn't. Carlos Sainz was in fourth. Sergio Perez was fifth. Alonso sixth, and then the two McLarens of Norris and Piastri seventh and eighth, Hamilton ninth, and Hulkenberg 10th. We'll talk about Hulkenberg's heroics because we were talking about that as qualifying was going on. And I, for one, would like to issue a formal apology to Nico Hulkenberg. We doubted you. I had him down in 19th. I think you had him in 18th in our
I'm
season
sorry,
predictions.
I never doubted Nico Hulkenberg. You just said you had him down. I don't think you even had him down in 19th. You had him down in
I had him.
20th.
No, I had Magnussen in 20th and Hulkenberg in 19th because I doubted Haas because I thought Nico Hulkenberg is a fantastic driver, but I didn't think that Haas was anywhere. But he's shown, even in the race where we'll get into it, but he had that incident, he's shown he's got a lot of pace. I think he is above Haas. I think he deserves a better seat. Maybe it's someone like an Aston Martin if we could see Fernando Alonso go to Mercedes next year. Do they go and bring in someone like a Nico Hulkenberg, which wouldn't be the worst fit? But yeah, Hulkenberg is a terrific driver, and I never doubted him. I doubted Haas.
Yeah, I think you did doubt Haas, and I think we both doubted Haas. I never doubted Nico Hulkenberg. I know what sort of quality you're going to get with Nico Hulkenberg. You talked about Aston Martin there. Let's not forget he was an Aston Martin reserve driver not long ago. Maybe there's still connections there with the Aston Martin team, and maybe they do seek to for him to gain a seat in the team. But I'd like to make a formal, not an apology, a formal announcement. Nico Hulkenberg when it comes to qualifying, Gothenburg. That's all that needs to be said.
I mean, German team, German driver. You know, would it be well, it would be one of the craziest things to happen in silly season. But yeah, Nico Hulkenberg, fantastic driver. A little mention as well to Fernando Alonso qualifying up in sixth. It turned out in the race that Aston Martin don't have the pace of the top four teams. They don't have the pace of the McLarens and Mercedes, who themselves don't have the pace of Ferrari, who themselves don't have the pace of Red Bull. It turned out so a great effort from Fernando Alonso qualifying up in sixth ahead of both McLarens and Lewis Hamilton. But we'll move on to our 1 to 10 driver ratings and where else to kick things off. Max Verstappen qualified first, finished first, 10 out of 10. And these are my notes. Unstoppable, Grand Slam, try again next year. They're my notes from the Max Verstappen's performance. Because obviously led every lap, pole position, and won the race. So 10 out of 10. Don't need to say anything else.
Yeah, for me, Max Verstappen, I gave him a 1 out of 10. I think it was an absolute dismal. Yeah, times that 1 by 10. Yeah, 10 out of 10. I've not actually given him. I've not actually done any notes when it comes to the driver ratings. I'm purely going to look at it from a realistic overview. There's no stopping him. There's got to be some sort of crash or he's got to get injured. I think, you know what, if even if he does get injured, he will race with two broken wrists, not like Lance Stroll. He'll probably race with two broken wrists and he'll still win the race. Um, but there's something that needs to happen to stop this Dutch monster. Because it's getting boring now. I'm hearing the Dutch anthem every single day, ring in my head, and it's like PTSD. I just wanted to go away, but it can't. It's yeah, 10 out of 10. I'm gonna stop waffling because all the Max Verstappen fans are loving it, and both of us are hating it.
Absolutely, absolutely. I didn't even watch the podium celebrations because I couldn't stand listening to that. It would be like PTSD. Sergio Perez up next, qualified in fifth and finished second. I've gone for an 8 out of 10. I thought it was a very solid drive. I know you're giving me a look. But you know, that's what it's expected of him. Yeah, he qualified fifth, but he wasn't far off finishing second. He was only, I think, about a tenth off second and third. Um, However, he did finish 20 seconds behind Verstappen, held off Sainz so comfortably. He had pace in hand as well, I believe. Um, 8 out of 10, I think it was a solid race for Checo.
No, I only gave you a look because I've given him a 9 out of 10. I've gone one higher. That's the only reason I've given you a look. Um, I know we're talking about him losing to Max Verstappen by 20 odd seconds, but that's expected. Max Verstappen has not got the same car that Checo Perez has got. Checo Perez has probably got a little bit of a deficit in his car compared to Max Verstappen's car. Qualifying, we always know Sergio Perez's qualifyings aren't brilliant. It was a feature of ours to slate his qualifying in 2023. But let's be happy. He made it through to Q3 and qualified in fifth. He qualified in the top five, so it's okay. And then to kind of make it through, make his overtake on Russell, on Leclerc, and on Sainz, and to get the P2. And let's be real, Red Bull got another 1-2 finish. And that's what you're kind of expecting if you're in a Red Bull team. And they managed that with Sergio Perez making up 3 places and finishing in P2. So I only gave you a look because you gave him an 8 out of 10, but I think it was a very good drive, making 3 crucial overtakes, getting that P2 and securing a Red Bull 1-2. So I gave him a 9 out of 10. That's the only reason I gave you a look. It wasn't that I gave him less, it's because I gave him more.
I mean, there's only a difference of one. You're making it out as if I've given him like a 4 out of 10 or something. No, but yeah, like I said, I think it was a very solid performance from
It
Perez.
did. It did
Um,
feel like a. It did feel like a 4 out of 10 when you were when you said the 8 out of 10. I was like, what? I just think he did very well. It like you say, it's not much of a difference. It's still an average of an 8.5 out of 10. But it did when you was explaining your decision, it did feel like a 4 out of 10.
yeah, I can't really give him any higher because he did finish 20 seconds behind Verstappen. I mean, he's done what's expected of him. That's what Red Bull want him for, really, isn't it? They don't want him to be challenging Verstappen because Verstappen's the star boy. He's their he's their prize at that Red Bull team. So they don't want him to go ahead and be fighting with Verstappen, getting into incidents and causing a nuisance of himself. And so that performance from Perez is perfect from a Red Bull point of view. Next up, Carlos Sainz. I've gone for a 10 out of 10 for Carlos Sainz. And my reasoning behind this is that I thought he was driver of the day. I thought he was the best driver on the track based on his performance. However, I've given Max Verstappen a 10 out of 10. So I can't sit here and say Carlos Sainz was driver of the day, but give him a lower grade than Verstappen. So that's why I've gone for a 10 out of 10. I don't know what else he could have done. Perhaps he could have challenged Red Bull, but you see how good Red Bull are on the tyres. The fact they were able to put softs on at the end it is ridiculous. So there's not much you can really do. A good podium, two great overtakes on his teammate, which I'd just like to point out. I thought he was thrown under the bus completely, Carlos Sainz, because he made the overtake on Leclerc. That lap, Leclerc comes into pit, Sainz comes in later and gets undercut by Leclerc. It doesn't make any sense. Surely, as the lead driver, you get the preferential strategy. I know people will say, yeah, but Leclerc was struggling on his tyres, but as the lead driver in that position, you should get the preferential strategy, and he didn't in that circumstance. So that annoyed me slightly. But yeah, 10 out of 10 for Carlos Sainz. I thought it was a fantastic performance and just what he needed to kick off his season with the looming doubts about what his future holds.
You know what? I initially put him down as a 9 out of 10, but I think I might have to agree with you on a 10 out of 10. I did completely forget that he got driver of the day. Um, but it's just what he needed. There's so much talk about him going to a different seat, completely scrapping F1 and going to a different series like IndyCar or somewhere like that. And there's so much uncertainty about his future because even Carlos Sainz doesn't know where he's going. He's got no seat after this season. And I'm sure a silly season will pick up and start again, and we'll see rumors circulating about him going to Red Bull, Mercedes, XYZ. But yeah, just a ruthlessness in his driving was very, very impressive in making two overtakes on Charles Leclerc, who was struggling throughout that race. And to finish on the podium, I think is a very, very good start to the season for Carlos Sainz. I mean, there was a few things on social media about his team not congratulating him about his podium, which actually did happen. There's obviously videos of his team not being there, but it did happen. His team did congratulate him, and etc. So there was a bit of false speculation regarding that aspect of Ferrari, whether it could be a bit of friction in the team already. But fantastic podium, fantastic overtaking, and it shows the kind of the kind of side of science where he's just not going to take anything. It's just team science. It's not team Ferrari. It's team science for this season, and he won't stand for any of it. So, 10 out of 10, P3 podium, perfect start for Carlos Sainz.
Absolutely. And I know the rumors circulating about him going somewhere like Audi, going there next year to have that year to bed in. I think that would be a complete waste of Carlos Sainz because he's on a level playing field with Charles Leclerc. He's proven that over his 3 years. There was only 2022, which looks to be an outlier now, where he was quite far off the pace. But the other 2 years, he's been right there. He narrowly got beaten last year. He beat him in 2021. And then this year, he's pulled out the goods. And, you talk about Charles Leclerc being a qualifying merchant almost, but like that being his specialty, putting in with one lap pace. Carlos Sainz is thereabouts always on Charles Leclerc. So I think, Mercedes should be looking into the possibility of signing Carlos Sainz for next year because he deserves a top seat. Maybe someone like Aston Martin or something like that he could also go to, but he deserves a top seat because he's a top driver. On now to Charles Leclerc. He qualified it in second and finished fourth. I've gone for a 7 out of 10. It was a solid drive, solid result. He had those issues, locked the brakes up a lot, which probably cost him a lot of time with the damage caused to those tyres. But overall, it's a decent result, decent weekend. So I can't really give him any more than a 7.
I've settled with an 8 out of 10. Qualifying, very good. You're expecting Charles Leclerc to be a consistent qualifier on the front row, and I was kind of sort of expecting that um anyway. So to see him qualify in P2 was very good. But then in the race for him to finish fourth, I mean, he had his issues, which saw the likes of George Russell, Carlos Sainz, and Sergio Perez overtake him. He was slowly being reeled in by Lando Norris, but he was able to. He obviously had those issues with his brakes, and when he switched tires, he kind of lit them back up again, and he kind of nullified those issues to finish in P4 and overtake George Russell for that place. So I've settled with an 8. It's a good performance, but I was expecting a little bit more. I can't lie. And I was hoping that maybe he'd get a podium out of this race, but unfortunately. It was Carlos Sainz and the other Ferrari that got the podium, but still a good performance nonetheless. Especially with those issues.
On now to George Russell. He qualified in third and finished fifth. And very similar to Charles Leclerc, I've also gone for a 7. Had issues in the race which were beyond his control, which cost him. Was looking quite racy at the start, got himself up to second, obviously. Then overheating issues with that engine meant he couldn't really fight the cars that overtook him. I think he'll be disappointed to be overtaken by Leclerc at the end, though. And so, yeah, I've also gone for a 7 for the exact same reason for Leclerc.
And similarly to what I said about Leclerc, I've done the same with George Russell, and I also went with an 8 out of 10 for George Russell. I went for the same rating for George and Charles. Same sort of reasoning really. They both had issues, so they couldn't really progress further forward than fourth and fifth. But still, they both raced. They both had decent races. It's just those issues that kind of held them back. So, an 8 out of 10 for George Russell.
Next up is Lando Norris. He qualified seventh and finished sixth. I've gone for a 6 out of 10. It's quite quiet, Lando Norris, this weekend. I think he didn't have the pace to fight those cars in front, but there's a lot of talk about McLaren obviously fighting for the podium challenges. They were second quickest team for majority of the second half of last season. But they couldn't really carry that momentum forward. Very average from Lando Norris, so I've gone for a 6 out of 10.
And similar to you, I've also settled with a 6 out of 10 for Lando Norris. It was, yeah, like you say, it was quite average. There's obviously been a lot of hype around McLaren, and them being the team to bring the fight to Red Bull, but unfortunately, in Bahrain, it wasn't meant to be, and it was quite a bit of it was a quiet evening for Lando Norris. I mean, he was closing in on George Russell and Charles Leclerc, but then kind of dropped back and was almost caught by Lewis Hamilton. So very average performance, P6 finish, made up one place, 6 out of 10.
And Lewis Hamilton up next, qualified down in ninth, but finished seventh. Same, I've gone for a 6 out of 10. I think, again, there were factors beyond his control with the overheating, which meant he couldn't push as much. He had to do a lot of lifting and coasting, and eventually, of course, it would have slowed him down. I think without that, he only finished 4 seconds behind George Russell. So given where Russell started, given where Hamilton started, Hamilton was in a lot of traffic at the start as well, behind McLaren's and Alonso. Maybe he could have battled with him had he not had those issues and had the traffic to contend with. But 6 out of 10 needs to have a better qualifying session, and then maybe he can look at those higher places.
For Lewis Hamilton, I've gone with a 7 out of 10. I think in the race it was a little bit of an improvement than his qualifying performance. Like we say, he qualified down in ninth, and you're not expecting for Lewis Hamilton to be down that low. But I think that matches his lowest qualifying in Bahrain ever, if I'm not mistaken. So it wasn't the best in qualifying, but in the race he looked a little bit sharp apart from those issues that he had to manage. And he was closing in on Lando Norris, but it wasn't meant to be. Maybe a lap or two, and he could have gained a P6 or even a P5 if he gained if he caught up George Russell. But a 7 out of 10, it looks okay, but like we say, it's got to be a lot better in qualifying if he is to contend for even podiums, dare I say.
And Oscar Piastri, now the second of the McLarens, he qualified in seventh, no, eighth, qualified in eighth and finished eighth. I've gone for a 6 out of 10 as well. Maybe you could make it 5 out of 10 because he was beaten by Norris. However, I thought he showed good pace. He kept up with Norris. He was only a few seconds behind, and I'm sure they would have told him to stick it with that position to not give to not have that team battle and maybe hopefully catch the cars in front of them. The only slight mistake he made was coming out of the pit exit. With Hamilton, he ran wide, but I think he was maybe a little bit too aggressive going into there. He did close the door on Hamilton when he was alongside. But I've gone for a 6 out of 10 for Oscar Piastri.
Yeah, and I've gone with the same. I've also gone with a 6 out of 10 for Oscar Piastri. I think the two McLarens were very mediocre during the Bahrain Grand Prix. Um, and it wasn't expected really. I kind of hoped that the two McLarens would bring a little bit more to the table during the Bahrain Grand Prix, but it just wasn't meant to be. Like you say, I think he only made that one mistake coming out of the pits, um, and he ran wide and nearly swiped Hamilton off. But I mean, it was an okay race. It's valuable points on the table, but it's just not what everybody expected from the two McLarens. So 6 out of 10.
Yeah, I think they were one of the more disappointing teams this weekend. Lance Stroll up. Oh, sorry, Fernando Alonso up next. I can't believe we've got him. He qualified up in sixth, but finished ninth. Surprisingly anonymous from Fernando this weekend, I thought. I think obviously he had that great qualifying session, which put him up there, but the pace just wasn't there in the Aston Martin. I think he maybe maximized everything he could out of it. So I've gone for a 7 out of 10. I don't know what more he could have done really, because obviously Aston Martin looks clearly the fifth quickest car, nowhere near the teams in front, but a long way clear of the teams behind.
Yeah, for Fernando Alonso, I've settled with a 6.5 out of 10. Losing 3 places from his qualifying position. I think qualifying very, very good for Fernando. And just in the race, it was completely anonymous. His race pace was completely zero. And he was overtaken comfortably by the two McLarens and Lewis Hamilton to finish ninth place. But it's still valuable points for the team, similarly to McLaren. But I think this Aston Martin might be slowly starting to go backwards and not forwards because of their race pace. It's not brilliant. It is just it does go without saying. So a 6.5 out of 10 for Fernando Alonso.
And on now to Lance Stroll. He qualified in 12th and finished 10th. I've given him an 8 out of 10 because he had that lap one incident. I don't necessarily think it was his fault. I think it was just a turn one incident, to be fair. It was a racing incident. But he got spun around, went down to 19th, but recovered very well. I think that Aston Martin clearly showed it was the fifth quickest car, as we saw. But, he still had to overtake a lot of cars, make up a lot of positions, and got that last points position. So an 8 out of 10 from me.
And I've also settled with an 8 out of 10 for Lance Stroll. Like you say, had that lap one incident, and got spun around, got to the back of the field, changed his tires, etc., etc. But still made it up to the points, got a valuable point. And I think just had a very, very good drive from the back of the field into the points. So yeah, I've settled with an 8 out of 10.
Next up is Guan Yu Zhou. He qualified down in 17th, but finished up in 11th. And I've gone for an 8 out of 10. Where we thought Sauber would be at the start of the season, we had 8th or 9th in terms of the quickest car, and he's ended up finishing just outside the points, and it would have been points if it wasn't for a decent comeback from from Lance Stroll, sorry. So an 8 out of 10.
And I've also gone with an 8 out of 10 for Zhou Guanyu. making up 6 places, which is the most out of other drivers in the 2024 Bahrain Grand Prix. And it goes without saying, he had a fantastic performance, made him got into the points just before pit stops, and then had his pit stop and kind of like maintained himself near there or thereabouts near the points. Unfortunate not to get a point where he got his first point in Formula One. Uh, is it now 2 or 3 seasons ago? Um, but yeah, he had a very good performance, an 8 out of 10 performance without a shadow of a doubt. And it's hopefully a stepping stone in the right direction for this Albert team.
Kevin Magnussen next, qualified 15th and finished 12th. 7 out of 10, very solid performance. Good start to the season for Magnussen. Was the lead pass, obviously, with Hulkenberg having that incident, but wasn't too far off the points again. Again, he was only a few seconds behind Zhou. Obviously, we can see the big difference between Aston Martin, who are the fifth best car, and the rest of the field. So I don't think there's going to be very many points up for grabs this season. But Magnussen, solid performance, 7 out of 10.
And another rating we've agreed on. I've also gone with a 7 out of 10 for Kevin Magnussen. For him to be the lead Haas, and I'm gonna put my formal apology out there already. I apologize to Kevin Magnussen for doubting him. Um, but it kind of showed Haas has a little bit of oomph this season about them. Obviously qualified into Q2, didn't get himself into Q3 like his teammate, but stayed out of trouble and was on the brink of the points. So yeah, very good performance, 7 out of 10, and another driver that can take a lot of positives from a Bahrain Grand Prix heading into the next weekend in Saudi.
Daniel Ricciardo next, qualified 14th and finished 13th. I've gone for a 5 out of 10. I think that's purely because we thought the RBs would be better than they were. We thought they were going to be challenging for points, and it didn't really materialize. However, I did see somebody online called RB Sugar-Free Red Bull, which I'm definitely going to start using that. So 5 out of 10 for Daniel Ricciardo because I think that Sugar-Free Red Bull was a better. It should have been challenging for the points.
Sugar-free Red Bull. That might be a new nickname for our V carbs. But yeah, when I say V carb, it just springs into mind vegetarian carbohydrates. Do I call them that? I might have to. You can call them sugar-free Red Bulls. I'll call them vegetarian carbohydrates. But I've given Daniel Ricciardo a 6 out of 10. I think it was a decent performance. Put on the soft tire for his last stint, and I thought he was trying to kind of uh, catch up to Lance Stroll and Joe, especially to try and get a point. Had that driver swap with Yuki Tsunoda, which we can finally talk about. Which kind of infuriated little Yuki, because they didn't swap back afterwards. Which is a little bit of a shock to the system because usually when you have a driver swap and it doesn't turn out for the other driver, you usually swap them back. But is it because they weren't in the points and they decided, yeah, we don't need a driver swap? I don't know. There might be a little bit of friction at the vegetarian carbohydrates. But it was an okay performance. Nothing better than that for Daniel Ricciardo.
Well, Daniel Ricciardo said in his post-race interview that was planned. So it wasn't a shock for Tsunoda to hear that call because he was always going on the softs for that last stint. So I don't know what's happened, whether there's been a mix-up or what, but it's not a good look at all. Talking of Yuki Tsunoda in the other sugar-free Red Bull, I've gone for a 4 out of 10. I've got to give it slightly lower than Ricciardo because although they were very even throughout the race, what is he doing on the cool down lap? It's a cool down lap. There's nothing, and he's chucked it down the inside. I think it's turn 8, the tight hairpin. He chucked it down the inside. It's very lucky Ricciardo turned out of the corner and was actually paying attention because you wouldn't really fault Ricciardo for not paying attention, thinking, yeah, I'm just going to do my cool down lap, get in, and off I go. And not really paying attention to what's behind him. But yeah, it's not a good look from Tsunoda. So yeah, I don't know what he's doing, but he needs to really get his priorities straight because I don't think 13th place is the biggest deal in the world. If it was for a point, you could argue it, you can see that, but it was for that they're not points positions. They weren't even fighting for points positions because Zhou was 11th at the time, and I think Stroll's quite far ahead and gaining every lap. So I'm not sure what happened there, maybe a miscommunication or what, but it's not a good look. So 4 out of 10 for Yuki Tsunoda.
I've gone middle of the road. I've gone 5 out of 10 for Yuki Tsunoda in the other vegetarian carbohydrate car. Uh, I'm actually liking calling them vegetarian carbohydrates instead of V carbs or sugar-free Red Bulls. Um, yeah, it's whatever happened on the cool down lap kind of needs to be talked about in the team because there could be a lot of friction. Well, I think there is a lot of friction in that team already. And I don't know why. I think it's a little bit unnecessary for Miyuki Tsunoda to do that because, like you say, they're not battling for points. And if it was for the point, there might be something to talk about here. But because they were fighting for 12th and 13th and 14th, yeah, it wasn't. It shouldn't be a massive deal. But Yuki Tsunoda clearly is bothered about every single position, and he wants Daniel Ricciardo's car to be obliterated after the Bahrain Grand Prix. So he decided to take matters into his own hands and try and destroy his teammates' vegetarian carbohydrate car. But fortunately, Daniel Ricciardo was paying attention and kind of was level headed and kind of I think kind of put a little bit of frustration that Yuki Tsunoda had. Um, but yeah, 5 out of 10 for Yuki. Frustration. I think I'm not going to say it because I'm quite sure, but I think a little bit of little man syndrome kicked in for Yuki Tsunoda, and I think he was a little bit hot headed in that car. And he just wants the best for himself. I don't think he's too bothered about Daniel Ricciardo or the team. He just wants the best for himself. So yeah, 5 out of 10.
And next up, Alex Albon qualified 13th, finished 15th. It's a 6 out of 10. I think he was running up in 11th at one point, but that the tires just fell off. I think the engine was overheating as well with that Mercedes power unit in. So an all right performance, but maybe not where he would like to be. Obviously, he wants to be challenging for the points, but yeah, it's not a good look at the minute. So 6 out of 10, solid enough, but hopefully for him in the next race he can fight towards close towards points.
Yeah, I've settled with another 5 out of 10. And it goes the way of Alex Albon. I think it's not the sort of race he was expecting. Like you say, he was battling at one point towards the points, but kind of faded away and finished 15th after qualifying 13th. So it's definitely not the race that he would have wanted to have. But like for most teams, especially Alpine and Alex Albon now, only way is up. It can't get any worse than this unless he drops to the back of the field and finishes 20th for the rest for the remainder of the season. But I don't think that will happen. I think Albon will be pushing himself as much as he can, and only way is up. So 5 out of 10 for the Bahrain Grand Prix for Alex Albon.
And on now to Nico Hulkenberg. I've gone for a 7 out of 10 because I don't think that as I said before, I don't think that the turn one incident was anybody's fault. I think it was a racing incident. It's just what happens at turn one. There's a bit of a melee, and some cars just get clipped where others don't. And Hulkenberg had a good recovery drive, finished 16th. He only finished a few seconds behind that pack of sort of Albon, Tsunoda, Ricciardo. That lot, he wasn't far off. So 7 out of 10, solid performance. What could have been? I'm thinking, what could have been for Nico Hulkenberg? Maybe he would have, he was ahead of Kevin Magnussen. Would he have stayed ahead? Would he have been fighting Zhou? Maybe he could have even been trying to hold off Lance Stroll for that final points position. We'll never know. But 7 out of 10.
I've gone with a 6 out of 10 for Nico Hulkenberg. Qualifying, fantastic, brilliant. I don't think Haas would have expected it in the first race of the season for them to be up in Q3, and they were with Nico Hulkenberg, who did a fantastic job. But then he had that lap one incident, and it kind of unravelled from there. And Kevin Magnussen was the lead car from that point onwards in the race. But like you say, lap one incidents happen, first corner incidents happen most of the time. So it's just one of them things that happen in racing, and I don't think you can point the blame to anyone. And he took it in his stride and kind of closed the gap onto like the 15th, 14th, 13th, 12th, that sort of range. But he just wasn't able to make any more ground upon them or upon those lots. So a 6 out of 10, a good qualifying performance. It kind of unravelled due to that lap one incident. But still a decent weekend for Haas and for Nico Hulkenberg.
Up next, Esteban Ocon obviously qualified down 19th and finished 17th. It's a 3 out of 10. I'm just going to do them both in one go. It's a 3 out of 10 for Pierre Gasly as well. Nowhere to be seen. Um, and I don't necessarily think it's their fault. I think they're handicapped by the car. We've seen these two drivers are brilliant. They've both got race wins. They both got podiums last season in that Alpine car. So whatever they've done this season hasn't worked. But 3 out of 10, it's got to be for both drivers.
Yeah, I've gone with a little bit of the same. Obviously they made up places, but they only made up places on Valtteri Bottas, who had that lap one incident, and Logan Sargent. So yeah, it's a 3 out of 10 for both of them as well. It's quite sad to see. They obviously had podiums last season, both of them, uh, in an Alpine car that showed good pace throughout the season. And this season, it looks like their progress from 2023 has completely evaporated and gone in the bin. So yeah, 3 out of 10, completely nowhere to be seen, and it's another case of the only way is up. And this is the only true case for Alpine, because I don't think it could get worse. It can only get better.
Penultimate driver, Valtteri Bottas. He qualified up in 16th, but finished 19th. Had that horrific stop, 50 seconds long, which sort of sealed his fate. I've gone for a 4 out of 10 because he was being beaten by Zhou up until that point. Couldn't really do anything after that. But yeah, I can't really give him any higher.
Yeah. So Valtteri Bottas, I've also gone with a 4 out of 10. And he doesn't quite match his record at the longest pit stop in Formula One, which was a day and a half back in his Mercedes days, if you can remember that stop, Ethan, Monaco. Um, and I think it was the same issue. There was a issue with the wheel nut. And they had to switch tires, take the wheel nut of the another tire, and they had to deal with that. 50-second stop. Wow. Ocon didn't even get that many penalties last year in the Bahrain Grand Prix. I don't remember. So to have a 50-second stop, it might go down as the second. I think the second longest pit stop in Formula One history. So yeah, it was just very unlucky for Valtteri Bottas, but comfortably beaten by Zhou Guanyu in the race, and I can only give him a 4 out of 10.
And last but not least, Logan Sargent. I don't know what happened to him, to be honest. I don't know if whether you know, but he had that weird moment where he thought we were going to retire. I think it was something to do with the steering wheel not working correctly. Had to come into the pits to change it. But yeah, I've given him a 4 out of 10 because he was stopped there for about a lap. So again, like Bottas, once that happens, what's he going to be able to do? But because I gave Albon a 6, it didn't feel right giving him any higher than a 4. So that's why I've gone for that.
And here comes the last finisher in Formula One 2024, Logan Sargent, 20th place. Uh, yeah, it was just very messy. Qualified up in 18th, and luckily didn't qualify 20th, but ultimately finished the race in 20th. So I've gone with a 3 out of 10. I think similarly to the two Alpines, I don't think he had a tremendous race. I think it was quite anonymous, and hopefully another driver where the case is the only way is up. I sound like a broken record because I've said it for both Alpines. I've said it for Alex Albon, and now I've said it for Logan Sargent. But seriously, those two teams, especially Williams, who were expecting to battle in the upper midfield, they'll be expecting for Logan Sargent to kind of play a little bit of a part in gaining the points this season. And for Logan Sargent to qualify only 18th and then finish 20th is not a perfect sign, but hopefully a sign where they can find improvements in his lap times and his setup, etc. So only a 3 out of 10 this weekend for Logan Sargent.
And that is it for our 1 to 10 ratings. So our top five at the minute is Max Verstappen and Carlos Sainz, neck and neck. Sergio Perez in third, and then Lance Stroll and Zhou Guanyu making up the top five. We'll move on to predictions because it is a back-to-back race week. So we'll look back at our Bahrain predictions and move ahead to Saudi Arabia as well. So let me kick things off. I didn't get my 2-star predictions at all. I had a Haas double Q1 exit and at least one B carb in the points, and both were wrong.
And I got 1 out of 2. I said Daniel Ricciardo in the points. Unfortunately, he didn't do that. But I had Logan Sargent Q1 exit, and the big guns come out again. You can call me a cheating merchant because Logan Sargent bound for a Q1 exit. Call me a cheating merchant. First race of the season. Marcus Rashford celebration. Thank you very much.
In qualifying, I did get a couple here. So I had Verstappen pole, of course, Leclerc third. Then I had Sainz, Perez, Hamilton. I had Sainz and Perez one place too high. They finished fourth and fifth. I had them third and fourth. I even got them in the right order, but not to be for that one. So 2 out of 5 for me in that.
And another Marcus Rashford celebration as Adrian comes with a 3 out of 5. I had Max Verstappen first, Charles Leclerc in second, Lando Norris unfortunately not in third as George Russell took that, but Carlos Sainz in fourth and Lewis Hamilton in fifth. So 3 out of 5, Marcus Rashford celebration, drinking Ethan's tears.
And on to the race, I'd done even worse in the race. I only got 1 out of 5, which was Verstappen winning. I had Leclerc, Perez, Sainz, Hamilton. So again, I had Perez and Sainz in the right order, but one place too low this time. So I've missed out on a few points there. I had Leclerc in second, and he finished fourth, of course. So close, but no cigar.
Another Marcus Rashford celebration for Adrian as he secures a 2 out of 5 with Max Verstappen and Carlos Sainz in first and third. I predicted Charles Leclerc in second, Lando Norris fourth, and Oscar Piastri fifth. So overall, out of 12, 6 out of 12, it's middle of the road, and I think it can only get worse from here. I don't think I'll be able to beat this performance at all. It's only going to get lower as the season gets on. But I'll take round one in the head-to-head predictions.
So looking ahead now to Saudi Arabia, so you take what is that a 5 or a 6-4 lead? Is that after Bahrain? So time to make up. So give me your 2-star predictions for Saudi Arabia.
So my 2-star predictions for Saudi Arabia, I've gone with a Red Bull 1-2 in qualifying. I think Max Verstappen, very, very good around Saudi Arabia. And Sergio Perez, he's won the last 2 Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. So I think if you're looking on form guides from football, and if you take it into Formula One, form-wise, Sergio Perez is very good at Saudi. And my second star prediction is actually a Charles Leclerc fastest lap. I think I want to make it a little bit more interesting. I don't want to make it who gets into the points and whatnot. I want to make it a little bit more interesting. So I've gone with a Charles Leclerc fastest lap of the race.
For my 2-star predictions, I've gone for same point scorers as Bahrain. So I think it's going to be the exact same top 10. Not in the same order. I'm going to make that very clear. I'm not saying it's going to be the exact same order, but you're going to have those top 5 teams making up the points positions again. And then for my second one, I've gone for Alpine P19 and P20 in qualifying. So I'll kick things off then with qualifying predictions then. So I've gone for Verstappen pole, of course. I've gone for Leclerc and Sainz, second and third for the Ferraris. I've gone Norris in fourth and Perez down in fifth.
So, as my star prediction said, I said Red Bull 1-2 in qualifying. So I've stuck with that. Max Verstappen in first, Sergio Perez second, with the two Ferraris of Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz third and fourth, and George Russell in P5.
And then for the race, I've gone for Verstappen and Perez, 1 and 2. Sainz and Leclerc, third and fourth, with Sainz again taking that podium position, and then Lando Norris getting up in fifth place.
And finally, for me, for the race, I've gone with another Max Verstappen victory. I think that's just a banker for everyone. I've actually gone with Charles Leclerc in second and Sergio Perez in third. I think that Charles Leclerc there might be a cheeky safety car, and Charles Leclerc might take advantage of it and finish second, with Sergio Perez in third. I've gone with Carlos Sainz staying in fourth place. And instead of George Russell in fifth, I've gone with his British compatriot Lando Norris in fifth. I'm hoping that maybe McLaren bring a little bit more of their A game to Saudi Arabia and are able to secure a top 5 finish.
But we'll have to wait and see how our predictions go on next week. So that is all for us today. Thank you all for listening. Thank you, Adrian, for joining me today. And we will be back next week reviewing Saudi Arabia, and hopefully we have a different race winner. Thank you for listening, and goodbye.